thanks for joining us on Firecrackers, the program where topic of national interest gets our attention. And we will begin by bringing you up to date with news that made headlines during the week. So we are going to be starting with Vice President Kashim Shettima, who returned to Nigeria after his eventful engagement at the 2025 World Economic Forum Wealth in the vice president who represented Nigeria at the annual Global Economic Summit presented the nation's investment opportunities to a global audience, advocated African economic integration, and held strategic meetings with world leaders and international organizations. Also, the House of Representatives postponed this plenary resumption from January 28, 2025 to February 4, 2025. This was contained in a statement by the House spokesperson Akin Rotimi Jr. on Friday. According to him, the development was communicated to members of the House through an internal memorandum issued by the clerk of the House, Dr. Yahya Danzaria Esquire, on the directive of the House leadership. Also, wife of the former Deputy Senate President, Senator Beatrice Ekweremadu, has been released from the United Kingdom's prison. Senator Ekweremadu, his wife, and Dr. Obina Obita were sentenced by a UK court over charges related to organ harvesting. And now to topics that get our attention today. The NCC recently approved tariff hike, which raised the cost of a 1-minute call from 11 naira to 16.5 naira, the price of 1 gig of data from 287.5 naira to 431.25 naira, and SMS charges from 4 naira to 6 naira. The hike has sparked widespread criticism, with organizations leading legal opposition to the decision. Also, the federal government set a target of 2027 for transitioning its examination system to 100% computer-based testing (CBT). Minister of Education Dr. Tunji Alausa disclosed this while speaking with journalists in Abuja after inauguration of the Committee on Improvement of Quality Examinations in Nigeria. These and many more get our attention today. It is indeed my pleasure to welcome you to today's episode of Firecrackers. My name is Iribami Salako, and I have with me here in the studio Olariwaju Oniito. She is the founder of Seek Care and Support Foundation. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us today on Firecrackers.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
Okay, all right. So before we get to the topics we have at hand, let us first go on this break. That is the increase in telecom tariff and added hardship for Nigeria. So when we come back, we'll begin discussions on this topic. Just stay with us. We are glad to have you back. If you are just joining us, this is Firecrackers, and we're just about to get started. So the first topic we have at hand, that is the NCC's approval of 50% tariff hike for telecom operators. I want to look at the possible consequences. So I'll be starting with my guest in the studio. So when you heard the news that NCC decided to, would we say, partially dance to the tune of telecom operators and approving 50% tariff hike. We knew that they were asking for more, but they are agreeing to 50% tariff hike. How did you see that development?
Well, we know that they did not increase tariff for about 10 years, and we saw the move. It's just that it's coming at the time where there's so much hardship in the country. Everything is going up. Cost of living crisis is, everyone can testify that it's not easy living in Nigeria right now. And so this coming at this time, even though it is something that is needed, because they are also businesses and they are faced with the same challenges that everyone is facing. So there's increase in, fuel prices, diesel prices, which fuels their mass. Exchange rate has gone really high. And so even their staff might have been asking for increased salaries because the cost of living has gone higher. So, they are also faced with many challenges as businesses. So, but the thing still remains that this is coming at a time where it is adding to the hardship to the average Nigerian citizen. And so the impact of this is that it's going to, I don't know how to put it. We depend a lot on our phones in Nigeria. And so it's going to affect from the family level communications up to even our micro, small, and medium businesses who depend a lot on their phones to be able to do businesses. So we have a lot of micro and small businesses that, sell on Instagram, they have e-commerce stores, they are delivering to their customers and they're using internet, they're calling customers. And so this is going to increase the cost of doing business. And so that sector is also impacted. We also have the education sector. You're talking about a lot of schools using internet data. We're talking about a lot of computer-based tests, them accessing a lot of their curriculum online. And so the impact of this is across board. Healthcare, everyone is going to be impacted. There are a lot of farmers, in their farms that use phones to access information about their seeds, about, getting a lot of information around even how to, plant, they're communicating with their suppliers. And so there's no sector that is not going to be impacted by this. And so, yeah, it's not a great time to do this, but is it something that, is needed? There are businesses too. Yeah, we all are feeling the pinch, but it's just at the time that it's coming that it's not convenient.
Do you agree with some organizations like Sarah NACOM stating that they want to sue because of this development and probably there are hidden consequences that would definitely happen because of this hike? Would you agree with them suing, or do you feel like maybe it's just something they could negotiate, maybe from 50% for it to go higher, or if you have to look at it from a realistic point of view, that even the 50% is probably still merciful?
So I would say we should all come to the table and have a discussion. We are all in the same economy. We all know that the exchange rate has gone crazy. We all know what we're seeing in Nigeria today. So I think it's for us to have a seat at the table and have honest discussions as to what exactly is going on. How has all these factors impacted their business as telecommunication companies? And what is the percentage that they should add to it that would create a win-win situation for both the customers and the organization? Because if these organizations as well fail to exist, then we do not have our phones to use. So it's also to be able to say, how do we ensure that we have a win-win situation for all parties? So I think a sit at the table, having honest conversations to be able to ensure that we're all on the right path.
Okay, definitely. Because if you have to look at how things are in Nigeria, truly, one should not really be surprised that we are having internet in lots of sectors, even the education sector too. We still have students that are still protesting hike in their school fees. Even just recently, we had a clash that happened with Ogun State, even with the deputy governor. So they are still trying to resolve that. I hope that gets resolved rather quickly. Well, which would still even take us to our next topic. Because if we are talking about one of the sectors that would still be impacted by tariff hike, that would still be the education sector. Now that the Minister of Education announced that by 2027, they want to transition to 100% CBT for national examinations. But before we delve into that topic, let us quickly go on a break and let us see this out. The federal government set 2027 for adoption of CBT examination model. And when we come back, we'll be looking at the transition, how feasible is it for us in Nigeria? And we'll also be taking a look at the education sector, because truly, for us in Nigeria, it's going to be a big deal. It's going to be something very commendable if we have people traveling all around the world to just come to have that education in Nigeria. So, well, we'll be looking at ways that would be possible too when we come back from this break. Stay with us. We are glad to have you back if you are just joining us. This is Firecrackers. Don't worry, you've not missed quite much, but you could catch up with us. We stream live on our Facebook and YouTube channel. So if you feel like you've missed, just go back there and then you could always see from where we began. And now where we are heading to now, that is education in Nigeria, transition to CBT for national examination. So after the announcement by the Minister of Education, that's Tunji Alausa, that we will be transitioning to CBT for national examinations in the country, well, definitely, whenever they make policies like this, it always makes people question, are we ready? Because just last year, they also made an announcement that was for entry age for tertiary institutions, which did not sit well with a lot of people, though that has been reversed. But it makes one wonder, will this policy too be meeting the same fate? Okay, now we'll get to be answering that question. So, But let us look at how things are in Nigeria. Do you think that by 2027, Nigeria would be ready to transition from pen and paper to complete computer-based testing?
Okay, so I'd like to take us back as to the why this policy happened. So, based on the what we have on the news, the core reason for this pronouncement is examination malpractice. And so the reason this was all pronounced was to curb examination malpractice, ensure transparency, which is great. But you know, there's something called problems that causes other problems. So when you find a solution to a problem, but then you're creating a bigger problem, that might be the situation where we're in. And that's because we haven't fully thought through this, because a 2-year timeline, I'm not sure about whether we're ready for this. But is this a good idea? Yes. In addition to curbing examination malpractice, I mean, the world is going digital. I mean, AI, we're talking digital all the time. So this would actually help us to improve digital literacy. And we're talking about the environment. I mean, using less paper is also a great idea. It would help. And of course, efficiency. Everybody, remember, during our times, we used to wait for results for forever. So if it's, you know, computer-based, it would, you know, ensure that results come out on time. So there are many benefits for this kind of policy, but there are lots of other challenges that come with just pronouncing this and saying by 2027, we all need to switch. Is 2 years enough? I'm not sure. Do we need to transition? It's a great idea. But some of the challenges we're facing first is infrastructure. So you're talking from, do the schools have computers? Do they have internet, which they've increased the price, by the way? And so are those things available? Is there power? You know, these are attendant infrastructural challenges that would, you know, kind of create, problems for us to be able to get this done. And even during the budget presentation, the budget defense by the minister, he himself said, we know that education faces quite a number of infrastructural challenges, shortage of teachers, not enough resources. So he's aware that these exist. And so that's one critical challenge that we need to discuss. Then the training. Do we have teachers that even are tech savvy enough within all our schools? I always say that our education minister, our education commissioners are not just commissioners for public education. They are commissioners for public and private. And we have quite a number of what we call the affordable non-state sector, low-fee private schools that are serving millions of children in low-income communities where public schools are not reaching. Now, do these schools have this infrastructure that would support this kind of rollout in the next 2 years? No. Even in Lagos, we have quite a number of schools that students there do not have constant access. Remember, you're writing an exam. A child is under tension. They've not used a computer for more than 2 years of their life or 3 years of their life, and they're writing a national exam. And so we need to ensure that we're not just ready by saying computers are available, but we're looking at the children. Have they had the time to get used to using this sort of technology for us to start putting them under, the examination pressure of doing this? Of course, the cost is there. But the major challenge for me is the inequity and injustice this might bring if this is not managed properly. And this is the core of the challenge. There are loads of children who do not have access to computers and access to technology enough for them to be able to write national exams. It's also not very clear when you say national exam. Is it common entrance? Is it included? So are we talking about our primary school children as well? Is it NECO? Is it WAEC? Remember, WAEC is West Africa. Now, is this CBT going to happen to all the West African states taking WAEC? Are we causing more inequity for our Nigerian children when others are doing paper-based and they're able to comfortably write the exams while we are struggling to do CBT and our children are failing? And so we need to look at this holistically and critically evaluate whether we are getting it right. Should we do it? I still say it's something we should go ahead and try to attempt to do because the world is changing. There are many benefits for this policy, but then are we doing it the right way? Are we ensuring that no child is left behind? by trying to do this within 2 years and by 2027. It's not just about pronouncements. It's about blueprints, roadmaps, and ensuring that as we're doing this, we're including every child. We're looking at every situation of every child in Nigeria because they're Nigerian citizens. They deserve the best. And we need to ensure that we're carrying every child in the rural area, in low-income communities, in urban states. And we just need to ensure that we're doing it right. This can cause a lot of challenges if implemented wrongly. And the way we're doing it right now, I'm not sure it's the right way. In fact, I'm clear that it's not the right way.
Okay, well, do you think that perhaps they are trying to ride the same lane that JAMB did? Because JAMB for over 10 years now have been able to successfully conduct CBT examinations, and that was still nationwide. So do you think that perhaps they could probably tap from the expertise that we could say that JAMB have now if they've been doing this for over a decade successfully? So do you think that probably for most of our schools, because we still have students who go to these rural areas, they have no access to computers, and then they're still doing JAMB, and then at least, although we do not have the statistics, if people in rural areas, if they excel in JAMB or whenever they are done with JAMB, or if you have to compare the rate of success for people who grew up being familiarized with computers and for those who have no familiarity with computers at all, if that could probably impact their scores at the end of the day. But if they are to follow the same that JAMB has done and still with the same infrastructural problems that we have, do you think that we might still have a success?
So first, the number of subjects you take in JAMB is not like WAEC. WAEC, it's a full exam. Theory, I mean, you're typing. Imagine you doing chemistry and getting a child that does not use a computer to raise to power something, or further maths, the YDX. How am I going to type all of that? So, I mean, the sheer number of children, if you look at the number of children that take WAEC, for instance, and this is, like you said, all national exams. So NECO, NAPTEP, WAEC, this sheer number, how are we going to do it? Where are we getting the sectors? You know, the cost of even putting these things in place. Are the schools going to do it? Are they accrediting schools to hold the WAEC exams in-house with the CBT? How is this going to happen? The main thing is that we're clouded. I mean, we don't even know. There's no release. So it's just the pronouncement. There is no, this is how we intend to do it. This is the implementation plan. This is what the strategy we have in place. So for us, it's just, they said, and it's not very clear. And riding on JAMB is the reason why we said it is a possibility, but the breakdown and the steps for, national exams is another kettle of fish, which we need to sit and look at how this should be done properly. It's not just a, let's do 2027. No, even the Sustainable Development Goals was not 2 years. It takes time, and we need to prepare. But we can have those goals. We can say we want to progress, but we need to have, realistic timelines. When we're setting goals, let's have SMART goals. And let's all sit down and see how this will be achieved. That way, I think we can be successful, at least trying to do this. And for me, it is, let's start maybe parallel and see how it works. Can we pilot in a few states? Can we have, we need to see how this would work. But you can't just roll out in 2 years. So I use the current SS1 students. I work with a lot of schools, and I look at the SS1 students in some of the schools I work with in low-income communities, and I'm like, I know this child has been set up for failure by just changing to CBT.
That was quite sad. Well, from your expertise, if we really want to do this, because like you said, it seems the 2-year timeline might not be realistic, but what are the important steps that you think we need to take to actually achieve that full transition for our national exams, that is from paper-based test to computer-based test?
Okay, so I also want to encourage us not to always talk about one side of the challenge. So we're talking about, we want to stop examination malpractice. We're going to put all the equipment in place. We're forgetting the side of the child, the voice of the child that is taking the exam. Are they ready? What are you putting in place to ensure that they are ready to be able to do this? And so, yes, we're investing in all of that. I mean, the minister said that they're putting all
they have to do in place to ensure that all the technology is done, infrastructure is done. Yeah, okay. What are we doing for the children? How are we ensuring that they are ready? So the first thing is education budget is 7%. If you look at the breakdown of the proposed 2025 budget, I don't see anything that links to what we're talking about here. So where's the money going to come from? So if the money is not made available, how are we going to implement this? So that's the first thing. I'm not even sure we have the budget for this. Maybe 2026 and 2027, they will budget for it. For 2025, there's no specific, allocation to this policy that has just been put in place. And so that's the first thing. It's important for us to also ensure that government starts to invest. If this is what they want to do, investment of time, investment of money, we cannot achieve anything in education if the budget is 7%. The United Nations says it should be between 15 to 26% for, a developing country like we are. We need to invest more. If we even invest 26%, 25, 26% in 1 year, it's not going to solve our issues. We need consistent investment over 10 years to be able to move the needle. And so if we're not putting money where our mouth is, then, I'm not sure we can achieve that. We also need to do a lot of teacher training and even, training of the students. There are big children that have not seen computers in Nigeria at this, as we're speaking. They've never, not used it, seen it. There are children that don't even know what the keyboard letters, where they are situated for them to be able to type. So, and then the confidence to be able to go into the room. So you're also looking at, how are we building their confidence to be able to enter a room and use a computer to do an exam? And then we're saying how many of our parents are even aware. So the awareness campaign, I spoke to a few of our parents and what are you talking about? Which one is CBT? Is it not just JAM? We need to start building the awareness and ensuring that our parents are support. Some people say, oh, can they do it on the phone if they have not used computer before? I spoke to a couple of parents and I'm like, no, I'm not sure that will be possible. So it's important that as we want to transition, we start to build a plan that talks about awareness for communities and parents, ensuring that we're also bringing on board all the stakeholders in the education sector. We even outside the education sector, because education is the foundation for a lot of things. How are we bringing everybody on board? How are we training our teachers? How are we training our children? How are we building their confidence? How are we ensuring that we're putting our money where our mouth is? That's talking on this side, building the child to be able to take those exams. But then on the other end, how are we continuing to invest in the infrastructure, in ensuring that we're putting all that it requires for it to be successful? So I always like for us to look at the two sides and ensure that we're ready for what we're saying before we start to put things out there. But my clear conviction is that 2 years is just a short period to say we want to do this. Are we ready? We're not ready for this yet. But is this something that we should do? Yeah, it is.
Because if we are just looking at the education sector, for this to be possible, a lot of other sectors do need to contemplate, for example, electricity. For instance, is a very big one. There are some communities, there are some villages that they've not had electricity supply for many years.
It's not even villages. I have schools in Lagos,
Badagry, that did not have power in 10 years. So, and it's Lagos. So it's not like village. So when we say villages, sometimes we always think, oh, no. In Lagos, there are communities that did not have power in 10 years. So how is this going to happen? How are they going to achieve this? So it's critical. Even though I say, should we do this? Yes, we should do it. But it's dependent on those factors. I've seen children that they were writing JAM and the system timed out and they had to wait 1 year to write JAM again. Not because they didn't know what they were doing, but because the CBT center, something happened and the system timed out and they said there's nothing they can do. It has closed their portal. So these are challenges, and this is, we might look at it as a number, but this is a child. that has prepared for an exam, that is hoping to go to university, and then just one glitch, and there's no solution for that person. You know, so it's critical that we look into this. It's a great step. Technology is great, but there are too many. I just think this is solving a problem and creating a bigger problem of inequity and injustice.
Okay, so would you say that perhaps first we need to first solve the problem of even having constant electricity supply all over Nigeria? I think the federal government is already making steps towards that. That is the moving of customers from band A, band C, band that has not really been pleasant for a lot of people. But let's assume that if that has completely been implemented, Nigerians are boasting of, let's say, like 20 to 24 hours constant electricity supply each day. Then after we've been able to solve that problem, and then also the one of having these equipment, training these kids, do you think that after we've had this in place, then we could go ahead and say that, okay, perhaps we could be able to conduct this successfully then?
Yeah, but even in the developed countries, all their national exams are not CBT. So, I mean, it's something we can strive for, yeah. But, I mean, if everything is in place, why not? Yeah, I mean, why not? But
that why not is still dependent on a lot of factors. And will there still be children in Nigeria, despite all these things being in place, that will still have issues with technology? Yes. We will still have children that might not be able to have access. So we also, even as we're moving there, we need to consider those that might not be able to do this and see ways we can support them. We need to make sure that this is inclusive, because there will always be marginalized groups. We will always have groups that might not be able to achieve what we're looking at. But in all, let's ensure that no child is left behind. We're putting the child at the center of our decisions, not all other things. That sounds nice. The child is important.
If you have to look at the root cause of all of this, they pointed at examination malpractice, which I think it has been with us, like corruption in Nigeria. Examination malpractice is something that has been with us for a very long time. And then rightly, they did say that it is not just the students themselves that are engaging in the malpractice. We also have examiners that support this. We have schools that support this, teachers in schools that support this. So if we are to look at, okay, because it seems it is unrealistic for us to transition to CBT by 2027. But what could we do to try to curb the spate of examination malpractices in our education sector?
I'm happy you mentioned all the stakeholders that are, partakers in this. But one stakeholder you didn't mention are the parents.
The parents are also fully. So when you say the schools and the teachers, a lot of them are enabled by the parents. So it's us. When we point the finger, we need to point it back at ourselves. The parents, I've seen schools that I work with that say that their population has dwindled because the parents insist that they should do these things for them. And so when they decide and they sit on the values that they have and say they're not doing it, they withdraw their children. And so they lose a lot of students because parents want them to do this. And so it's just like you said, just like corruption, we need a mindset shift as a country. I mean, this examination malpractice thing, it's enshrined in our system so much that every single stakeholder needs to resolve to solve this for it to even have. Because what I said was that even CBT, they will find a way around it. I mean, it's just, if they do it for the first few years, some people will know how to hack something or know how to do something. So, yeah, there will always be one way or the other. It might might reduce the percentage, but when people are resolved to do something, they will find a way. So if there's still parents that are insisting that their children should be supported in the exams, malpractice will still continue. But if you reduce it to maybe I don't know whether BRS minimum, but it will definitely reduce examination malpractice. But then if we are still our people that still insist that, our children should be helped, then this might still continue even with CBT.
Do you think that that whenever people who engage in examination malpractices are caught, they might maybe cancel the exam for them? Do you think that perhaps it might be time for the punishment to even go from the students who are caught, but also perhaps to their parents, teachers? We know that they usually sanction some schools, especially the special centers, so to speak, that engage in these malpractices. So when it comes to punishment, because I think that's one of the things that actually check people, because if there's no punishment, then people feel like, okay, then I guess it is all right for me to do it. I just need to be smart about it. But what type of punishment do you think that might be suitable for this type of offenses that would make sure that it discourages people from partaking in it in the future before we transition to CBT?
Okay, so I mean, for any kind of, let's say, crime, whatever punishment is attached to it supports in deterring people from engaging in that sort of thing. So, I mean, what is adequate? I mean, it really depends. We've seen centers where the full question bank is available to them. That way you'll be able to decide. It's not just, this cannot be one child that just brought this in. It has to be a compendium of different people for you to get the entire exams. I mean, if a child, so you need to look at, what exactly has the child done, or what exactly is the scale of this malpractice. But I do think that in terms of malpractice, there has to be one critical thing that I would recommend is not just canceling the results for that year, but also, suspending them from taking the exam for a few years. I mean, because for that year, they'll come back next year and do it again. There has to be a bit more stringent punishment that can ensure that they know the consequences of what they've done. But yes, adding other stakeholders, it's important that proper investigation is done. And if they see that other stakeholders are involved, there's also the sanction of the school. And, there also has to be a repercussion. So our teachers are certified by the Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria. And so if teachers are caught supporting students, the way in law, when you can debar a lawyer, I mean, if someone is caught doing this kind of thing as a teacher, they should be deregistered from the Teachers Registration Council, because you are not fit to be a teacher. If you are so afraid that you've taught a child for a number of years and the child cannot take the exam on their own, you have to help them to pass, then you shouldn't be called a teacher. And so TRCN themselves also has to find a way to also link this to the teachers that are certified in a way that when they're caught, there are consequences when it comes to their certification as well.
This actually makes us look at the education, the type of education that we have in Nigeria, where students are just sort of taught to cram, and then you do exams, and then you just sort of vomit everything that you've crammed. So if we are to look at how education is in Nigeria, how do we transition from that just read and learn, read and then master it during exam time, write it, and that is the end? If you ask some students what it was that they wrote in the exam, few minutes after, they've forgotten all about it.
Yeah.
Because it's as if our education system is just tailored in a way that, okay, just know it's temporarily for your exam, and then that's just it, you are free with it. But how do we get to this stage that it becomes a part of us? For example, now subjects like biology, geography is not just something that you learn and then you just write it and then you forget about it, but something that we could relate to our environment. How do we move from that? Because if we are to look at how education is in Nigeria generally, I once talked to a friend of mine whose geography teacher came from Japan. He said the teacher was always, the lecturer was always unhappy with them because they really don't know much about the practical side of it. You are studying geography, maybe they'll tell you to go and map this area and that area. But what about you having these personal relations with the environment you're working in? How do we get to that? Because the only thing we take serious to some extent is medicine. And after medicine, it seems as if we don't really pay much attention to the ones that we need to get physical, we need to get practical on. How do we get to that stage in Nigeria?
Okay, so I mean, there are many schools of thoughts, and this is my school of thought. I'm of the opinion that the way our education system is in Nigeria is we are trained to learn by rote. So cram and pour out and pass. And you're not really immersed into whatever you're studying. And so for me, I'm not very clear that even this national exams that we're discussing, why are we even having so many exams, at this point? When we look at the number of out-of-school children in Nigeria, many drop out because of some of these exams everywhere. So, the transitioning from junior secondary to senior secondary, because they have to write Becker, there are quite a number of children that drop out at GS3 at that point. Is it that they cannot learn? So I believe in learning. And one thing we've seen in Nigeria based on data is that 70% of even the children in schools are not learning. So what is the purpose of education? If they're not learning, like you mentioned, your friend, are they really immersed in what they're studying? A critical example is I learned that the 2 students that finished from University of Lagos, the best graduating students with 5.0 GPA, had written JAMB more than 4 times. They wanted to get into medicine. They couldn't. Now, are these people not intellectually sound? They finished with a 5.0 GPA. It means they had A's in every single course from year 1 to year 4, and they studied cell biology or something like that. They're intelligent. Of course they are. But they didn't pass JAMB at least twice. I think one of them even wrote it like 3 times. So what is this exams that we're talking about? How are we evaluating what the child is learning? Are the questions helping us to see whether they truly understand or they're just pouring out what they have learned? So it's critical for us to evaluate that. Personally, I think that there are different ways we can educate our children in Nigeria. There are different methodologies, different curriculums that we can look at, and the way we grade. But in conclusion, from my side, I think that what we currently have is not the best that we can have. Can it be improved on? Yes. But it goes back. So it's not just the terminal exam. It goes back to even how are we teaching? How are we training our teachers to teach? How are we training them to, ensure that the children understand? Because if they truly understand, they don't need to memorize. It comes naturally to them, and they'll be able to pass these exams. So it's a web of different issues that terminates with the exams, but it's also, can we go back and, look at the root causes of some of these things, and we're ensuring that we're putting that in place so that the child succeeds. So I think, once we're able to do that, which is not something that happens overnight, I think we'll have better results as a nation.
Let us look at our education curriculum. We have cases. I've once been a teacher, and then the primary school I was teaching then, primary students were taking like 12, 13 subjects. Do you think that's advisable, especially for this young developing mind? Is it not overcrowding, burdening their brain? Should we not tailor our education in a way that, okay, we do the important ones and not just say that, okay, because in our school we want to do like, okay, we do music, we do computer, we do cursive, we do this, we do that. And then they're just burdening the brain of this. I don't know, I might be wrong when it comes to using the word or to burden their brain. But do you think that perhaps we even need to review the number of subjects that we should be doing? Even for WAEC, that they said that, okay, you do like nine courses, 9 subjects. we still have secondary school that despite the fact that you're just going to be writing 9 of these subjects for WAEC, for NECO, for GCE, they still do like 13 subjects in school. So the remaining ones, are they not just sort of wasted? So what are your thoughts on actually guiding our curriculum to the interest of the child and not just doing it for the sake of we want to seem fancy?
Okay, this is also my opinion. So I'm of the opinion that we should allow our children to explore. Children are very creative. Their brains, there are many things we wanted to do as a child that they'll tell you, don't do it. And as you grow older, you lose your creativity as you grow older. So I think the subjects are a lot. And there's a school of thought that is not even enough. Our schools don't have STEM years. They don't have this one year. There are global skills that we need to add. I'm of the opinion that every child should learn entrepreneurship, for instance. I wrote a book on entrepreneurship for 7-year-olds because I believe entrepreneurship is a skill you should have from childhood. So I'm also pushing for, so everybody's pushing for things that, they need to put in. But I would say there should be core subjects, and then there should be opportunity for the child to explore. Schooling is not education. Like I said, education is lifelong learning. We need to ensure that our children are learning, and we should expose them to things that help them to learn, critical skills, for their future. Because, who knows? Maybe chemistry might not even be needed when AI decides to fully develop. So it's really developing their minds and ensuring that they can explore as much as possible. There should be core subjects, yes, that will be taken in exams, but it should also be managed that a child, I've seen some secondary school, especially GS 1 to 3, when they carry bags, you'll be wondering, 17 subjects, why, for what? If you have your core subjects and you have your areas of interest, like in university where you can have electives, let the children, explore based on what they're interested in, but their core subjects should still be there. But I'm of the opinion that we shouldn't just restrict them to just core subjects because they might have interests outside those core subjects. We shouldn't stop their creativity and their interests. They can explore, but let's make it like there can be electives in secondary school based on interest, and it can be guided. And that's my own opinion.
Okay, all right. So to round up now, because time is fast running enough, what would be your advice to federal government and parents moving forward in achieving this better education sector overall in Nigeria?
Right. I think the first thing is we need to, as a nation, agree our vision for education and our citizens. If there's no clear vision for where we want to take Nigeria to in terms of its citizens and its younger generation, everything we're doing is out of place. Because if there's no North Star and everything is aligning to that North Star, we're all just working against each other. And the first thing is, where do we want our children to be by 2050? How do we want them to compete globally? How do we want Nigeria to be perceived at that point? Then we work back and tailor our education sector to do just that for us, to deliver that for us. Because if we want that North Star and courses in our universities, we still have zoology and whatever and all of those things. Why are we having it if it doesn't lead to that North Star? So we need to be able to define that North Star, and every other thing should, align to it. And that's my advice.
Okay, now what about the parents? Because when it comes to education, parents are also important stakeholders.
To the parents, I would say that there are different stratas of parents. So there's some parents that don't even believe that their children should go to school. I would tell them that education is not a scam. To the young people, education is not a scam. We're not seeing it as we should, but education is critical for every child. Education is not just school. Education stems from the Latin word educere, which means to bring forth. And that means that if we're supposed to bring out the best in our children, we should ensure that they are educated. And so I would advise every parent, ensure quality education for your children. Education is not passing exams. Education is not going to the best schools in the world. Education is ensuring that your child is a lifelong learner and they have the skills required to thrive. And that's it.
All right, thank you so much. It has really been a pleasure having you on the program, and I can't believe that just like that 1 hour just went by. Thank you so much for being
Thank
with us
you for
today.
having me, and it's been an exciting time.
Yes.
I love talking about it.
Yeah, that is so obvious because this too has really been educational. So once again, thank you so much for being here. And that's our guest, Olariwa Jonito. She is the founder, Seed Care and Support Foundation. Thank you so much for being with us again, Firecrackers. All right, so this is where we'll be drawing the curtains close in today's episode of Firecrackers. So thank you so much for staying with us to the very end. And I'm sure, like myself, you've also learned quite a lot today. And then we sincerely hope that education in Nigeria, well, our education sector is going to be so envious. People will be running from all over the world to come and school in Nigeria. Well, that's the goal, and I do believe it is possible. My name is Iribami Salako. We thank you so much for being with us today on Firecracker. See you same time, same station next week. Do have a wonderful week ahead. Goodbye.